to the Weekly Bioanalysis, a KCAS Bio podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the 97th episode of the Weekly Bioanalysis, the official podcast of KCAS Bio. KCAS Bio is a bioanalytical CRO serving the pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical industry for over 40 years. My name is Dominic Guarino, and I've been in the large molecule space for over 30 years. I'm here with my co-host, John Perkins.
Hello, I'm John Perkins, and I've been in the bioanalytical LCMS space for around 30 years, too.
John and I are members of the growing scientific advisory team here at KCAS Bio. Either or both of us are available to answer any questions you may have regarding this podcast or any of KCAS Bio services. We are amped up to have you listening to the 97th episode of the podcast, which is now available virtually everywhere. Wherever you choose to find and play your podcast, you can now likely find the Weekly Bioanalysis. We welcome all of you, whether you're joining us for the first time or if you're a regular listener. As always, today's podcast will be a review of the latest news and resources, and then a focus on a topic of our choosing before discussing any feedback from you. We're constantly looking for topics, and we'd be happy to discuss something that you may want to cover. So again, we're amped up to have you here, and we're looking forward to a fun episode. To kick us off for podcast number 97, John's going to go over today's podcast topic a bit before we jump into the news and resources. John.
Yes, so as usual, as you said, we'll touch on some news items, and then our main topic today is a review of new drug approvals in 2025. Not too tight an agenda because it's a fascinating topic, but it does a lot of facets to it. So yes, looking forward to a long involved discussion.
All right, John, let's jump into the news and resources. What do we got going on?
Well, this is it's a sort of more of academic interest. I think it's I'm not sure how big an impact it really has, so long as treatments are managed, but it's basically HIV can evolve to resist Gilead's lenacapavir, but at a cost. So this was one of the, I think it was an approval this year actually, but basically lenacapavir was approved for twice yearly HIV preventative. So it's been used before as a long-acting viral long-acting treatment for HIV, but it's the fact that it could become a twice-a-year administration really helps in terms of flexibility of treating patients. But because it had already been studied for long-acting treatments, Gilead had a lot of data to look at. Was there any signs of resistance to lenacapavir? Simply because, as we all know, with antibiotics, etc., and resistance is obviously an issue that everyone has to be concerned about. So what they found was that yes, HIV was able to change the structure of its protein coating to avoid the drug's effects, but it actually, that change in the protein structure actually then diminished the virus's ability to replicate. So the thought process is, yes, there's resistance can emerge to lenacapavir, but if you then combine that with other treatments, then you can still maintain the effectiveness of whatever regimen you're treating patients with. So I'd like to say it's an interesting academic study as to, what the possibilities. I mean, we see a lot about people saying, well, what's the long-term effects of these drugs that people are taking, and GLP-1 seem to be in people's line of fire at the moment. But, obviously trials are being done that go over multiple years, and then, people are looking at data post-trials to get a measure of these things. And I thought this was a really nice example of looking into what the long-term of this drug is.
Yeah, it's really pretty cool. The concept of going down from it sounds like twice yearly. Obviously, that helps the patient. It's an interesting scientific sort of evolution, John. Right? Where
sure, absolutely, yeah.
Where and on the surface, it's like if you don't truly understand viral replication, you might think, well, no, that's bad. And the reality is, no, it's really good.
Yeah,
It's okay to have the virus so long. If it can't replicate it, it won't hurt you, will it? Right. So
exactly. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's
And
the gist of it. The gist of it. There's it's hard to. Well, no, you were going to add something else, but it is fascinating how both the virus and the body have such great evolution to them that they're kind of each fighting each other, and that little virus keeps. It's amazing that the drug is pushing the body to kill it, and the body's sitting there doing all these things because it wants to survive. But that virus is mighty, isn't it? You got to respect viruses, is what I'm trying to say, John, and the fact that it's found a way to say, okay, you win, but I'm still hanging around. Right? That's still a
exactly. Yeah.
little scary.
And the concern with this is lenacapavir had a different mode of action. So again, it's like, how does the virus deal how does the virus react to a drug that is different from what it's seen before? And like you say, it's not. It's always going to evolve and it's always going to find a way. So even though it's a different mechanism of action, but then that means that you bring in something with a complementary method of action, and then you can continue treatment. So it's I'd like to say I thought it was a nice academic approach to sort of figuring out what the long term potential was for this drug.
Well, yeah, and maybe we'll move on after this one, but it makes you wonder, like, is the next generation of drugs, not necessarily ADCs, but like any sort of AAVs or gene therapies and things like that, could it fully eradicate HIV? Boy, I'm going to ponder that one all
No
day.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's a tough. I don't. You're right. That's I'm usually pretty opinionated, right, John? I'm usually like, oh, I know, but that the thought of could we ever truly eradicate viruses? Dang, that
sure.
would
Yeah.
it'd be a great mission for any of our young scientists out there.
Yeah, I mean, and it's amazing just the simple changes because you read through this, and it's basically they looked at Gilead scientists analysed HIV samples taken during lenacapavir's phase 3 Capella and phase 2 Calibrate trials, which studies the molecule's use as an HIV treatment. In 40 samples, the team identified 3 primary changes to the virus's capsid that enabled it to escape lenacapavir binding, the most common of which was a methionine amino acid that was swapped to an isoleucine. So just one change was enough to evade the drug. But although this change resulted in high-level resistance, it also led to extreme fitness costs, reducing replication capacity to below 20%. So it's an ongoing battle. I can see at some point it'll figure out a different change.
Without using any vulgar language, it's like, oh, you think you've got me? Oh, I win, and then the virus did this awesome single mutation, and then what it do? Cut off its ability to replicate. Which, by the way, that's how the virus survives.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, great stuff, John. Yeah, what do you say we go on to the next one? Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're moving completely different disease category into Alzheimer's for the next couple of items, both of which are, again, early stage research it's like we have a few approved drugs for Alzheimer's, but I still get the impression from all the articles that we read that it's still something of an unknown. And that is not me slating people who are in this field. I mean, it's still trying to learn what's going on with Alzheimer's while we're developing drugs.
Yeah, John, you're not off, John. It's like a snowflake. And what I mean by that is even if you have biomarkers that look the same and whatever it is, I'd say the manifestation of the disease is unique from individual to individual, which makes it so hard to treat. But go on.
Yeah, that's a really nice analogy for a layperson like me. So of course, as we're getting older, particularly some of us in the room, it is that's one of those, having been like a fully functional member of society and very, your brain is a valuable tool, and the thought of losing any power to your brain is obviously a concern as we age. So I think the Alzheimer's ones are of particular interest to me when they come up. But this is actually the headline was "Cancer might protect against Alzheimer's. This protein helps explain why." And it's basically researchers have noted that cancer and Alzheimer's disease are rarely found in the same person, fueling speculation that one condition might offer some degree of protection from the other. A study in mice provides a possible molecular solution to the medical mystery. It's a protein that cancer cells produce that crosses the blood-brain barrier, where it helps to break apart clumps of misfolded proteins that are often associated with Alzheimer's disease. Anecdotally, they quote a pathologist who says if you see someone with Alzheimer's disease, they've never had cancer, but actually that's not really. That's like I says, it's a bit hyperbolic. Although there is definitely a percentage reduction in terms of people with cancer. There was a meta-analysis of data from more than 9.6 million people found that cancer diagnosis was associated with an 11% decreased incidence of Alzheimer's disease.
Hang on,
so you've got this like anecdotal. There is some solid background to it, and so a team in China, actually, I think it was Yuming Liu, a neurologist at Huazhong University of Science and Technology in Wuhan, China, looked at the biology that was possibly behind this. So what they did, and this is really nice, they transplanted 3 types of human tumor, lung, prostate, and colon into mouse models of Alzheimer's disease. The mice with cancer did not develop the brain plaques characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. So then they went looking through the proteins secreted by cancer cells, searching for those that can cross the protective blood-brain barrier to infiltrate the brain. And this took 6 years trying to figure this out. So this has been a long time in coming, and they figured out it's one protein called cystatin C, and cystatin C binds to the molecules that make up the hallmark brain plaques of Alzheimer's disease. This interaction activates a signaling protein called TREM2 that's found in certain immune cells that patrol the brain, and those immune cells then degrade the plaques. In the cancerous mice, this plaque degradation was linked to an improved performance on cognitive tests. So I've talked a lot through the background. I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, so it's cystatin C and TREM. I think it's TREM2. Yeah, we've got some experience. Bioanalytical lab here. We've measured these things. It's really surprising that cystatin C can make the blood-brain barrier. It's huge, and they even talk about somewhere in there it gets in there and maybe like at an early stage and just kind of gets stays in a repository, and then if you do get the disease, it kind of comes out of hibernation. I don't know if I'm reading that right, but I want to take a small step back. What I can't tell if the hypothesis that anyone that gets Alzheimer's or Parkinson's is cancer free. That's false.
Right? I think that's false. I think that's like I say. I think that's hyperbolic. I think that what people like a pathologist has observed there's an association, but it's not 100% association.
And then someone showed that it's like an 11% decrease.
Exactly. Yep.
I don't know. It does make you wonder a little bit about the thought of like, hey, something's wrong with my brain, but maybe I don't get kids.
Yeah, I don't know if they've looked at it that way. I think it's more the Alzheimer's piece. But yeah, you never know.
No, it seemed, and because then it's to me, I started thinking about like a lot of times, certainly like the allergy space, autoimmune space. Sometimes you get like a double whammy, triple whammy. I've often thought in the neurology space there might be multiple. Like there's different, I kind of touched on earlier, different flavors of Alzheimer's. Maybe you have a couple different versions of it. That's why it's so hard to diagnose. It's so hard to, but back to this paper here, John.
Sorry to interrupt, but just that meta-analysis was looking at cancer patients and Alzheimer's. They haven't done anything to the reverse. So is there something that Alzheimer's do that has a counteracting effect? This is purely in one direction. So
and they went the cancer route, right? They said cancer. If you get cancer, then you have a decrease of Alzheimer's.
Yes,
if I have Alzheimer's disease, do I prevent myself from having cancer? Well, that seems like a pretty big cost, John. I don't want that. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yes, yes, yes. I'd rather gamble, keep my brain and gamble with the developments of oncology drugs helping me on that side of things.
You know,
But
before we knew
it's
about
like I said, there is that they do say that um, because of the cystatin, yeah, it did help in cognitive tests for mice. So long term, this might be one of those routes where you do end up with an Alzheimer's treatment that goes some way to reverse it. But that's going to be years in the making, and it's probably too late for the likes of me. But you know, this could be a step towards it.
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. They took 6 years to do this study, which is in and of itself like, oh my goodness. God bless.
Well,
God bless the grad student working on that, John. Probably there for 10 years trying to graduate. It took
yeah. I mean,
to do
it's
this
basically
study.
it's 6 years just figuring out the data.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than 6 years because they say researchers spent the next 6 years searching for the best ways to model the two conditions in mice. Then went to that. Then it was another 6 years to come up with the protein that was the potential helper here.
Right.
And when you said about crossing the blood-brain barrier, I mean, that obviously is incredible. And their thought from the Chinese group is that the blood-brain barrier weakens in people with early Alzheimer's. So, but then they have another person commenting this saying it's not clear if that's enough to allow cystatin C to enter the brain. But obviously something's going on to help that happen.
The wall has been breached, so to speak.
Yeah.
Just a small step back here. I was thinking about, like, in our lifetime, so many incredible things have happened, you know, drug development wise.
Sure.
If you remember, like, I'm going to go back to the 70s and 80s, and we just used to have stay away from Susie's grandmother because she's mad and crazy and whatever, right? Now we know what that is, John, right? Seriously, we now know what that is. And it's funny, those people always seemed incredibly healthy. And although I do think there is a moment where, so that obviously it seems like they may not get cancer, but eventually you do succumb to the disease because it usurps your ability to function muscle wise.
Sure.
To lose that. So I'm going to stop there because I just depressed myself, and I was
yeah.
And it got me thinking, like, oh, remember we used to say, oh, that person's crazy, and now we know that's not it at all. We don't talk about my son's probably never heard of the way we used to kind of maybe diagnose the old. But anyhow, John, the good thing here.
If I can close out on this, then basically the thought is the fact that they found that cystatin C can activate TREM2 is valuable because that gives a pathway to try and address things. But so far, early clinical trials of molecules that activate TREM2 have met with mixed results, but it gives a path forward. So, like I say, we talk when you talk about the progress in medicine, when you look at how a lot of diseases, if you were diagnosed, that was a death sentence, and how they've been able to lengthen people's lives, etc., with available medications. It gives you hope on something like this. So
yes. And it's TREM2 is it's an immune cell. Those that patrol the brain, that's what they kind of say here. But it's definitely an immune cell, some sort of immune cell marker. It becomes soluble, though. I do know that we've measured it solubly as well as by flow cytometry. Okay. It's a hot topic, but what's really interesting is can't quite tell. I think it's Weaver, so that's the Toronto, because there's a Toronto group, right?
They were the group commenting on the research. Yeah.
It says it's going to take a cocktail of drugs to treat Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a single magic bullet. John, that's such a true statement.
Sure. Yeah,
we got a second Alzheimer's here. Why don't you cue that up?
We do, because this is actually one that, when I'm looking for stuff to talk about, this is one that popped up. It was actually out there in terms of just a random news article, and then it did come into the more typical trade news things. But this is cellular energy booster reverses advanced Alzheimer's in mice. So basically, a molecule that restores cellular energy stores was able to reverse symptoms of Alzheimer's disease in mice, potentially paving the way for a new class of therapeutics to treat the devastating disease. This is researchers at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland looked at brain tissue from humans with Alzheimer's and found that those with lower levels of nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide NAD+, a critical component of cellular metabolism, had more severe disease. They found a similar correlation in Alzheimer's mice, and so they gave the rodents a compound that they've labeled P7C3A20, which is designed to restore NAD+ to normal levels. They published the results in Cell Reports Medicine, and not only could that drug prevent the Alzheimer's from occurring in mice or increasing in mice, but also boosted memory and reduced anxiety in mice that already had advanced stages of the disease. They tested it on mice with two different genetic causes of Alzheimer's, one driven by amyloid protein and another by tau protein. And that's actually incredible. I actually missed that when I was looking at this before. So yeah, they've seen this. So they've seen the effect in two very different animal models. So it's there's a genuine effect. So again, it's like maybe you've got another path forward that can really help with things. So they actually don't want to. There is a balancing act here because they don't want to elevate NAD plus too much, because if you do that, then you're there. Here we go back to the other article. If you take it beyond natural levels of NAD plus, it could actually promote cancer. So there's some challenges there. I will pass it back to you because again, I thought this one was amazing when I first came across it, and thought it was a really good one to touch on.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's really fascinating that so if you have low levels of NAD plus, you're and to me it's like metabolism, right? That's
sure.
It's energy. It's what you need to function. The severity of Alzheimer's is increased, right? So sure, give them this drug and it kind of helps restore it. And I think you talked about tau and A beta; those are common Alzheimer's biomarkers. And again, we've got methods for those if anybody's interested. But then like it's that dual-edged sword of the body, right? The moment you get too much of that, obviously, when you talk about energy within the body, if you're now you're getting into like angiogenesis, like that is tumor genesis, right? If you start producing too much energy, your cells are just going to start dividing, and that's what cancer is, right? So it's natural to think of it the other way. A restriction of energy, on the other hand, you think it would just cause like necrosis, which maybe some of Alzheimer's is is a necrotic like state, right? Maybe the brain's just not getting enough fuel, so it starts to kind of work off of a different pathway. And sometimes your muscles have a whole bunch of different pathways to allow for, non-oxygenated, the lactose kind of pathway. But maybe the brain doesn't have that kind of flex, or if it does, it doesn't. You know what I mean? I hope that made sense. It's like the Krebs cycle, all these cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Anyhow, now my brain hurts, John, right? Like I'm an immunologist. I'm talking about biochemistry. I'm way out in the water now. I don't know, man. But it is a really fascinating story. And NAD is something we measure as well, John.
We can, absolutely, yeah. It's a bear, but we can do it.
What do they sell? They sell a red. Is there like a dye you use and an LCMS or a UPSC method?
It's just direct LCMS, but I think it's that whole cycle. There's instability associated with the number of the metabolites, etc. So it's challenging, but we can do it.
Is there like maybe there's a functional assay I'm thinking of where there is like some sort of way you can look at the functionality of it through like a dye, some sort of dye measurement, which makes sense, right? Like if you have a lot of active NAD, and I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. That sounds like you need a cell in there, John. So let's move on. It's Thursday. It's cold.
Yeah, so just a couple more things. They're actually the group at Case Western they've established a company called Glengarry Brain Health, and so they're looking to move this molecule forward. So I will definitely watch that with interest.
What's Glengarry? That's a famous name, right?
It's Glengarry Glen Ross is a play by David Mamet that I think became a film. I haven't seen either, but
I think I saw the film. But that's interesting.
I think is that the one that Jeff Jeff Goddard cites as watch the first 20 minutes, and it's a great
Yeah.
example of how sales works or something.
Yeah, it does. I think it's got like Spacey and Baldwin in it, but
Yeah,
maybe
sure,
I'm
yeah,
confusing my movies. But and I think he uses the ABC line in that movie. That
sure,
might be the
yeah.
one. But anyway, we digress, John.
So like I
Any
said,
last thoughts here? Although it looks
I
like
have to say, I wondered if there was any link between the Glengarry Brain Health and Glengarry Glen Ross when I
I
read
doubt it.
it.
It doesn't. I bet you it's not. I bet it's completely different, and you and I are just like completely into it.
It's just old men babbling together.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, it's so the last thing they said in the press release, the key takeaway is a message of hope. The effects of Alzheimer's may not be inevitably permanent, which would be great. And again, I wish them the best of luck, and it might just be that maybe they hit a roadblock, but someone else will pick up and pick from there. So yeah, I'm sure there's a path forward with this.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting.
it's
They make
great.
yeah. Sorry to talk over you. They talk about some approved medicines to tackle amyloid. Right? There's
Mhm.
some real like there's Eli Lilly's didn't get quite as much controversy as the Biogen and SA drug did. Remember back? I think
Yep, sure,
years
absolutely.
ago.
Yeah,
But those perfect candidates to re-engineer them and potentially make a new therapeutic, John.
yeah,
So I think there is hope here,
yeah,
and that's all
yeah.
we're looking for in life is a little hope, John.
Exactly. Yeah, a little hope and some nice food.
Yeah, and good drink.
Yes. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
This should be quick, but I thought we talked about GLP-1 analogs a lot in the past. And so it's like GLP-1s are going through the natural life cycle of drugs. We've obviously got the two that are the front runners in Wegovy, semaglutide, and then Mounjaro, tirzepatide from Lilly, and there's a lot of research going on in the background with other companies and next generation GLP-1s, etc. I mean, I see this week Roche said that they had a GLP-1 that was looking good and going into phase 3. But beyond the novel drugs coming through, there's focus on other parts of the, like I said, development cycle. So the first one, and like I said, this can be quick. Sandoz CEO on Ozempic generic launch plans for 2026. So Sandoz, a part of Novartis, of like the generic arm. I think they still are. They definitely were when I interviewed with
No,
them
they
years
are.
ago.
They're the generic.
Um,
Yeah.
and they're planning to launch the world's first generic version of Ozempic or semaglutide in Canada in 2026 and possibly Brazil. I think Novo Nordisk didn't cover themselves with patents in Canada, so it gave like the generics an early in. And so there's basically Sandoz are first, but Apotex, Teva Canada, and Taro Pharmaceuticals are all looking to do a similar thing. So it's that next stage where we start seeing generic forms and then the effect on prices, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So I don't. I can run through both these and then throw it back to you for comments. The other piece is Novo Nordisk aren't sitting on their hands, and I think for them it's like I think a lot of the talk seems to be with Mounjaro and tirzepatide, but Wegovy, and I'm fascinated how they've done this. I don't know. They've launched their oral version of semaglutide, so. Semaglutide is normally an injectable because it's peptides. So it's not usual to have an oral form, but they have an oral form of it, and so they've launched it, and it's basically hit the ground running with a lot of doses, and it's that convenience that we've talked about on the podcast of having a pill that you can just drop down as opposed to injectables, where people don't like injections. One of our friends, we were talking to him in the a few weeks ago in a local brew pub, and she was saying that she's a trained phlebotomist and will happily obviously take people's blood samples, etc., but really hates needles on herself. So it's but that's a natural.
Oh yeah, John, it is. Yes. Come
So
on.
like I said, this will be really interesting because obviously Novo Nordisk have gone the path of making an oral form of semaglutide, and like I said, that has got to be some fascinating engineering there. Lilly obviously have their own oral drug coming that's in these clinical studies, and it's called orforglipron, and so they hope to launch that in the spring. So you can see, so we might move from the battle of the injectables to then the battle of the oral versions, and
Oh,
I don't know if there'll be a trade. I think because Manjaro's still seen as the gold standard, so there might be a trade-off in terms of these oral forms, in terms of the weight loss you can achieve, but there may be a more user-friendly version
yeah.
that people gravitate towards. So that's all I want to say, but I'll pass it to
Yeah.
you. And
Well, a couple things to tackle here. One is the oral version of things, and then maybe the generic piece is the
sure, yeah,
second. But the oral version, because it's GIP1 and GLP1, they say that the Eli Lilly drug will be far more superior,
sure,
and I think
yeah,
it'll be a real challenge. Like you said, it's really fascinating that they've been able to take something that is a peptide injectable into pill form. And if I had to guess, whatever that pill form is, they got to get through the mucosal immune system, where typically peptides either get absorbed, degraded. Your mucosal immune system from mouth to anus is its own sort of network, so to speak, its own sort of like immune pathway, I guess. And so whatever they're doing, they've got to overcome that high acidity, high pH, essentially. And just like the gut has, the gut breaks down all your food. It's designed to break
sure,
down these
yeah,
things. So they have to have something that must be able to overcome that in some sort of fashion and still get absorbed systemically. Fascinating science, John. I'd love to know how they're able to do that. And I worry maybe the efficacy of it drops, but if you have to take a couple pills versus an injection, then it's definitely a far superior kind of for the patient, right?
sure,
And then as a sidebar, as someone in grad school who was known as a vampire, meaning I needed lots of people to donate blood to help me look at the the way I was trying to characterize papillomavirus peptides for T cell research. I was scared to death of blood, of giving, not scared to death. I'd pass out. So like people were always on me. They'd be like, well, you're like a vampire. You ask everybody to donate, but you never donate. So I did donate one time, and about 10 seconds into it, my eyes are fluttering, and the phlebotomist popped the needle out there like, oh no, you're not going down. I'm like, no, I don't want to go down. No one wants to catch me, John, So it's funny, but I think I've actually overcome some of that with age. I
yeah,
don't know why, but just a side note there, I found it funny that the phlebotomist that you were chatting with has the same kind of aversion
yes, exactly, yeah,
I do
yeah,
to it. It's part of why I didn't go to medical school, right? I like blood in the tube. I don't like it anywhere else. So, but that conversion from injectable into pill form is still somewhat to be determined. And then on the actual, I'm going to flip over to the whole generic battle is what I think of it. And by the way, there's many Chinese biotechs and farmers that are launching their own GLP
sure.
ones.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And then now that Sandoz, they're top three generic company in the world, right? They're launching this in Brazil. They said Mexico and Turkey. It's just going to be a battle, right? People are going to be
Yep,
buying it
yep, yep.
overseas. It's just going to become a fascinating thing. But I do think Lilly's drug with their GIP and GLP is still the most advantageous one, in my opinion. But my opinion probably doesn't really matter. But it will be something to see in terms of how this all plays out in terms of the pricing of it and the overall savings. Because often these things kind of get capped. But it will be headline news for the next decade, John. We can.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
This is
absolutely, yeah,
this is
yeah.
and as for side effects and all that, I don't know, but people are, and I'm actually on the fence about thinking about taking it. The reason why I'm hesitant is I've been able to kind of manage my weight and lose some weight without it. So it's just I think of it as a little bit more conditioning and blood, sweat, and tears on my end. I love to work out, so it's not hard to try to eat healthy and lose weight. But it is something that just the number of people that I know that are on this drug who are just so much happier.
Oh, sure,
They're,
yeah,
they're,
yeah.
they're they're still slightly obese. At least the people I know that it's really changed their lives, like
Hmm.
my sister and a couple
Yeah.
of my friends, where they've
Well, I mean,
lost 60, 80 pounds.
we had Kath on here on podcast
Yeah.
92, and yeah, it just it so it's made her much more comfortable with herself, but also, I mean, things like there are those side effects of where taking a statin might not be necessary because
Yeah.
they're seeing lowered cholesterol,
Yeah,
etc.
well,
So,
exactly. If you're
um,
on 6 medications and you're down to
yeah,
one, you
yeah.
got to think that whatever that one may have as some side effects, it's got to be superior to 6 drugs. All drugs have side
Yeah,
effects.
and all the interactions, you don't know what they're
Yeah,
doing
no,
to
it's
kind of.
really,
Uh,
I'm convinced whatever that side effect is
yeah.
somewhat negligible to, I mean, people are like, happiness is important, John.
Oh,
I know it
totally. Yeah,
doesn't mean you
yeah,
want to, shorten the longevity of one's life, but if you're unhealthy and you're doing all these other things, that has side effects that we're still
yeah.
trying to sort out. So it's really a fascinating topic. I don't know. Yesterday, obesity hit over 50% in America. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I missed that
It's
one.
slowly
Yeah,
going up,
yeah, yeah.
despite the GLP ones. I think a lot of people that are on the GLP ones are people who are just trying to lose that last 10 to 15 to get into
Sure.
that
Yeah,
real
yeah.
kind of, I'd say, fit, if that's really what that is. But that's a lot of the usage of it. But I think it'll be a real, like, almost warlike amongst these generic companies, amongst the innovative pharma and biotech companies. I mean, you still got people launching drugs,
Yep,
innovative
absolutely.
drugs. I mean, it's fascinating. You still got innovative drugs, and now the generics. And by the way, the U.S. market won't be available till 2030, the early 2030, because of the patents here in the U.S.
Protection. Yeah,
But I
exactly.
still don't. I don't know. I'm sure it'll have some effect if it's available in Mexico, for instance, sometime in 27. That'll really be a challenge for some of the innovators.
So yeah, so that I think that will be interesting. And then if the yeah, I mean, it really then is what if there's patent protection on the injectable on both the injectables, that's when the orals become the key one,
Yeah.
and because they're likely to be lower cost.
And like you said, the company, the innovator injectables, those innovator companies that are making oral versions, that's another
Yeah,
innovative. So
yeah.
they're kind of hedging their bets, and I'm sure Lilly's working hard to get a GLP version of things too. But I do think that is probably going to be a little harder because now you got two peptides, you got to get through the mucosal immune system. So, John, great stuff.
Yep.
I'm done.
Yep.
Enjoyed that. It was we went all around the gamut with from Alzheimer's to metabolic health. It's great stuff, John. But I don't know. I always like today's topic. Unless you had any last thoughts on the news, we can shift to our
Well,
main
not at
topic.
all, because pretty much all the stuff we talked about, with the exception of GLP-1 analogs, are potentially way in the future, but just a
Mhm.
nice to keep an eye on what's happening. And it leads us into our main topic, which is we thought we haven't done this in a while. So let's look at the new drug approvals in 2025. It's one that we touched on occasionally, and usually it becomes, we sort of throw out a couple of things out there, and it's a sort of supplemental news item rather than a sort of focus on what's happening.
So, John,
But
hang on. Before you
sure.
jump in, yeah, I just want a quick question. Were you somewhat surprised or almost shocked by the mix of approvals in 2025?
I honestly didn't pay a lot of attention to it during the year until I stopped and looked at the full list, and then it is really interesting. There were a couple of standouts that were there's a couple of
Blockbusters, yeah.
there's blockbusters, and there's other like different stories in there, which we'll touch on obviously as we go through it, because there's no structure to this at all. This is purely, if I just do the introduction, yes, I think this wasn't a bumper year for approvals, but there's still 53 new drug approvals. In Europe, it was 38, and looking at the list in Europe, that was actually interesting to me, because again, I don't pay much attention to European approvals, but because we had two articles saying 53 in the US and 38 in Europe, actually, if you look at the drugs that are being approved in both continents, they're quite different. I sort of basically went through them all and checked. I highlighted the ones that were in were basically approved in both
Okay.
continents, and that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 12, 13. I should have done this earlier. Sorry.
Yeah, but so John, the breakdown, right, is like 59% of the approvals in the US were small molecules.
Yep, yep,
In
yep.
Europe, it's not nearly that high, right?
Well, I don't know because I haven't because so it's 16 on both in both continents were approved in both Europe and the US. There were a lot of other drugs approved. Like I said, it was 38 new molecules. So there's 22 others in Europe that weren't that either have previously been approved in the US, where Europe's playing catch up, and that's true of a couple that are on this list where they've already got dates where they're expecting them to be. They'll have a decision from Europe. There are two on the list from CSL Behring and Leo Pharma, one of which was is obviously a large molecule, one's a small molecule, that were approved in Europe last year. So there are different schedules between the two continents. But yes, you're right. The real surprise, counter to what industry opinion has been for years. I remember sitting in a talk. It will now be, I would think, pre 2007. So you're talking 20 years ago, being sat in a room, being told that small molecule is dead. As a small molecule CRO, we need to branch out because the future is large molecule. And yes, the future is large molecule, but it doesn't immediately kill your small molecule research stone dead, as this year proves, because of the 53 approvals, 31 of them are small molecule. And if you want to like, look at things a little bit further, there were two ADCs. Well, that they have a small molecule component with the payload. So yes, it's a more complex species, but small LCMS is still vital to that. And then there were three RNAi medications, which you could possibly lump into small molecules. You can do them by LCMS, but you can also do them by LBA. So they're like a half and half. But they're really not. It was amazing to see that how many small molecules were approved, and the breadth of different indications as well.
Yeah, and if you just you did a nice job of highlighting where it was approved in both. So of the 9 large molecules approved in the US, 6 of them are approved in Europe. Of the 31 small molecules, only 7. To me, it really seems like I don't have the European list in front of me, but the 60% small molecule in the US, I wonder if it seems like it might be slightly lower in Europe, meaning a more of a mix of large molecule, just based off of the fact that of the 9 in the US, 6 were approved in Europe and only 7 in small molecules. But perhaps there's more small molecule approvals in Europe.
Like I say, some of them will be a timing thing, because I didn't look at, for example, 2024 FDA approvals to see which of the European ones were
kind of
approved last year. Because just to touch on that, there are two that basically there's a drug from Omeros, which is a large molecule for hematopoietic stem cell transplant associated thrombotic microangiopathy, which is a serious blood clotting complication. They expect a European approval decision mid-2026. And the other one was from a company called Milestone Pharmaceuticals, which is a small molecule. It's called etripamil, and it's for the treatment of acute symptomatic episodes of paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, and their decision isn't until Q1 2027. So that's why you see some of the different schedules at play there. While we're talking introductory, I'm really pleased that 2 of the drugs that we've worked on, without naming names, were approved this year. So directly, the bioanalytical support was done by KCAS. There may be some others that I'm not aware of, but
there's more on here. Yep.
Two small molecules I definitely know that we worked on. Were approved, so that's really nice. Nice to see and be part of.
I see about 3 or 4 others I think we may have had impact on. So of the 58 in the US here, we're probably I think we touched maybe close to 8 to 10 of them, John. If I'm upon quick looking, but it is fascinating. you know, the disease indications themselves are broad, right?
Yep.
A couple of vaccines on here. I was going to turn my attention to that, but maybe I'll hold off until before we kind of digest the small and large molecule, and even we're kind of lumping the ADC in there. But there's
Sure.
a good mix of therapies, some rare diseases, some immuno-oncology, even a couple allergy immunology, and I think there's one or two in the, let's call it the it's not necessarily metabolic, but it's like in the what's the word? More in the like for psychosis, right? There's one or two on here for that as well,
Sure.
which is
Yeah.
a little bit understudied, but and really been evasive to try to treat some of the depression and things like that. That's another right along the Alzheimer's type of therapeutic area. Anything trying to impact the brain is very hard, as we've kind of discussed earlier in the podcast here. But I don't know, John. I don't. I was going to shift my attention to some other drugs on here before I move off of small and large. But
But yeah,
any
I
final
one
thoughts there?
one thing I want to highlight. It's really encouraging. We talked about ADCs. We've talked about ADCs a lot, and there was definitely a lull in terms of approvals of ADCs. So it's really nice to see, from our perspective, to see that this field is moving forward with two more approvals. So one was some AstraZeneca slash Daiichi Sankyo, and this is from the Daiichi Sankyo research
Mm-hmm.
engine, to the partnering with AstraZeneca, and then the other one was out from AbbVie, where they basically they acquired the ADC as part of a buyout. That is an interesting theme. The number of these drugs that were actually acquired as part of a buyout, and then it was in the pipelines. Obviously, the due diligence was done, and the decision to buy paid off for the larger companies or the companies concerned.
Yeah,
There's a number of those.
yeah. I would imagine you're going to see more and more ADCs on this list in
Sure.
26 and beyond. But we're going to start seeing some of those ARCs and other conjugated technologies. Is where I think you'll see some proliferation of approvals.
Yeah, I think.
I was surprised that you don't see any of them on here. The only conjugates on here are ADCs. So
Yep.
I bet there's a whole bolus of that in the coming years.
Oh,
But
I would totally
it still
agree.
seems like it won't penetrate. Small molecules, I don't see this going away. We've been doing this podcast for 5 years or something like that. And I think this is only the third year we've done something where we went back and looked at the previous year. And it's still so heavy, small molecule.
Yep.
And like you said, I remember hearing, "Oh, small molecules are dead," and that was a false hypothesis right there. And small molecules are still very, very prominent in the drug development and patient care. And even like the switch from an injectable to an oral is an indication of why oral drugs have that added benefit of ease
Sure.
of use for the patient and compliance,
Exactly.
right? Compliance
Yeah.
is a big issue here. It's really, if you got to go get an injectable once a month and you live in a rural area, that becomes real challenging.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the reason for some of these approvals, where the existing therapies exist, but it's an oral form that is going to have, obviously, has a good chance in the market. It's true of Crinetics Pharmaceuticals have a small molecule to treat adults with acromegaly, which is basically the patient produces too much growth hormone. That was one. I'm trying to see if I can find any other. There's at least a couple of them where that's the driver. Is the small molecule piece. I thought also what was interesting is some of the big heavy hitters that you associate with being in the news and advertising a lot. Current medications don't appear on the list at all. So Pfizer aren't on the list for this year. Roche aren't on the list for this year. Novo Nordisk aren't on the list for this year. So despite, I mean, obviously they're in a good position with their, they're in a good position with their GLP-1 franchise, but then already the threats are starting to come in terms of generics. So that they need to do something to build on that.
No, they are.
I thought of another that was so AstraZeneca are on the list with Daiichi Sankyo, but like I said, that's a partner
Yeah,
drug.
no
That was
BMS
the
either, John. BMS is
Oh, be it that was another one I
yeah.
thought of. Yes, yes. I mean, so a lot of the companies that you associate with a lot of the higher selling medications are in that phase where they're trying to get their next their next blockbuster to market.
Yeah, and even GSK's on here, but it's for a vaccine, so they
Well,
didn't.
they're on for one vaccine and one large molecule. So they got a mAb for severe asthma,
Oh, I see it. Okay,
which is and then
yeah,
you're
but no
right.
immuno-oncology though. Still, that's surprising.
Yep,
Go
yep.
ahead. Yeah, just
And and then the vaccine for meningococcal vaccine.
it's,
Yeah,
maybe we pivot to the vaccines because there's a couple.
sure, absolutely. Go ahead. You can go.
What?
We can go wherever.
Yeah, no, I know.
This is free flowing. I mean, even though I had a very loose very loose agenda for this week, I think we can just talk wherever we feel like it.
Yeah,
And
no, and it just I it's again it surprised me that there were two COVID. Well, it says prevention, so they're COVID vaccines. There's
sure,
two of them on there.
absolutely.
I think that's let's not lose sight of that. We definitely want to see vaccines for COVID. As you know, no matter what anyone says, we need vaccines,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
but we want them to be vetted the right way, studied the right way. So now that we're not in some sort of pandemic, it'd be good. It's good to see on here that Novavax and Moderna each had some additional vaccines for prevention of COVID. I definitely think it's something that no different than hepatitis vaccines and HPV vaccines. It's something that we should be keeping our eye on as a
Well,
field.
we talked first news article is about the mutation of
Gilead.
the pathogen to
Yeah.
evade your treatment. That's exactly what we have to deal with COVID. We can't
Mm.
just sit back and say, well, those vaccines that we had are good enough. The your foe here is wily in that it doesn't have a brain, but it has a natural instinct to survive,
Yeah.
and it's going to it's going to supersede what you have. So you have to still keep thinking about how can we counter this.
Yeah, no, and just closing out the vaccines, you mentioned the meningococcal,
Mm-hmm.
great thing to be targeting, and then it's a chikungunya vaccine.
Chikungunya, I think it is.
Yeah, thank you. And that's definitely not something that's prevalent here in the U.S. to the best of my knowledge, but I'm sure it's in I don't know, third world, the resource poor, whatever the language is for
But
underdeveloped countries. I'm sure this is a big breakthrough.
yeah, I don't know much about chikungunya, but again, with something like that, it's like our climate is changing, so
Mm.
something that might not be a concern. I'm not sure about
Yeah.
chikungunya, but it's certainly true of other diseases, etc. And for example, mosquito-borne diseases, as the northern hemisphere warms, we get things coming more
Mhm.
towards
Mhm.
us that weren't an issue. Yeah, I was talking. Yeah, we were talking to someone about, but I can't remember where it was, but Lyme disease and how that's changed in terms of. I can't
Oh.
remember where the region was. I think it was. I think it was in the northeast somewhere, but that how Lyme disease is much more prevalent than it
Good
was
old
when I remember
alpha
growing up.
galactosidase is the
Yeah,
culprit there.
yeah,
Yeah, fascinating. Um, so one thing that popped into my mind while we were talking, and we're kind of all over the place a little bit,
good,
is the other.
sure.
If we set our sights to more of the gene therapies, the big advantage of that is hopefully it's maybe just a single,
Single treatment,
yeah,
yes,
single
yes.
or a couple, and that again really really powerful for patient care and compliance. If you don't have to again inject weekly or monthly, if you can go to see the doctor once, maybe a second time, that's going to be really really beneficial. And we've talked about that here. There's some unbelievable stories around especially in the pediatric space with gene therapies, where people who couldn't see.
Yeah, one of the gene therapies was an eye one.
Yeah.
I find that whichever the eye one was, again, it was, you're right. It was because it's been directly administered into the eye. It's one injection versus multiple injections. If you're using the already approved medications, I can't
Yeah,
quite
I'm,
find
I'm,
that
I'm looking
here.
for it as well. But then there's also some of the ones for respiratory treatments. The other is for Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome. So that's definitely rare disease stuff. Great.
Yeah,
It's
that's
that is near and dear to us, John. Like
Mhm.
those rare disease therapies are
and
awesome.
And this was one of the ones that really stood out on the rare disease front. If you look at number 46 on the list from Fondazione Telethon, it's to treat Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, a gene therapy, and it's a tiny number. I didn't think we have the list of patients, but this was the first gene therapy from a non-profit to be approved.
Oh.
So it's basically, we've talked about this where, parents have got together and started funding research, then they've assigned the rights to another company, and then the company, as they've moved the therapy forward, can't figure out how to make it profitable, and so they part things like that, and then the parents are like, well, we thought it was going to be there to cure kids with this condition. What can we do? How can we get the rights back to try and advance this forward? Well, this was actually one where it was a non-profit that took it through to market. So basically, Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome is a genetic disease that leads to bleeding, eczema, and infections, of which patients have few options beside a bone marrow transplant. And so it's an Italian charity that got it approved, and then they're going to work with the Orphan Therapeutics Accelerator to help access to the gene therapy in this country. So that was one I definitely wanted to highlight, because when that happened, this is amazing,
What is it? Fondanzi?
I mean, to me, I think it's probably Fondazione. I don't have.
Yeah,
I've
that
never
sounds
done
right. But
Italian.
it's telethon, right? So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
So
That's
it's basically something foundation is the group.
yeah. It's rare.
So,
You're right. Not many nonprofits bring drugs to market. That's
sure,
awesome.
exactly, which is incredible. And to go back to that GSK asthma medication, again, it's another one of these ultra long acting medicines injected just twice a year, making it much more convenient dosing than other biologic treatment
That's a
options
great point.
that targets the IL-5 cytokine.
Yeah, that's a great point. Even the biologic space or large molecule space is looking at ways to reduce the number
Oh,
of,
sure, yeah.
hospital visits. That's just patient focused kind of therapeutics is great stuff.
I thought another big, possibly big one, but again we'll see because there's more trials ongoing. Is number 2, suzetrigine by Vertex, which is commercially be Journavex. That's for acute pain. And the deal with that is this was the one that we've talked about in previous podcasts, because it's a non-opioid pain treatment. So then it takes away that addictive potential. I think it is still in trials for chronic pain because that's obviously the big market for them. But at least acute pain, it's made it to approval. So that will be an interesting one.
Yeah,
to see
no,
how that commercializes.
yeah. Let's take a moment on that. I mean, what a great breakthrough that is, because treating pain with something that's addictive comes with its own downside, and we know
Sure.
we've got
Yep.
all sorts of issues with addiction to pain medicines that are, unfortunately, really kind of causing lots of death. I don't know how to put it any other way. and so hats off to Vertex to tackling something that's non-opioid based. As you said, it's good for acute. It's still trying to unlock that chronic pain.
Yep,
right?
exactly. Yep.
There's no matter what you did. And then, of course, as you take the drug, even if you chronically get some relief, your body usually adapts and then the pain comes back, right, John? So it kind of, whatever, again, your body's so powerful, it can almost render the drug almost not effective over time, whether it's desensitization of a receptor or whatever it might be. And then, of course, the downside is you got to take more if it's an opiate, which is really dangerous, right?
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
But I don't know where else you want to go.
I'm going I'm going to jump to a few fascinating ones, and
Sure.
and like just number 9, Seleno Therapeutics. It's a small molecule diazoxide choline, and it's actually this is not well, this is to address the condition, but it's also the knock-on effects of that condition. The condition its indication is hyperphagia in adults and pediatric patients 4 years of age and older with Prader-Willi syndrome. And basically, Prader-Willi syndrome um, is the hyperphagia is this constant need to eat,
Mm.
and so the patients can get aggressive in terms of food seeking behaviors due to hyperphagia. It is a rare disease, but this is what I think is amazing to me. It says divorce rates among parents of children with Prader-Willi syndrome are higher than normal, and unaffected siblings can develop post-traumatic stress disorder from patients' sometimes aggressive food-seeking behaviours due to hyperphagia. So this isn't just helping the patient; this is helping the people around them as well.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
that.
what a fascinating. That's a
Yes,
real.
yes,
How do you tease that out, right? Like we're going to treat unaffected siblings, essentially, is what this.
exactly. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Because you don't think of that, but that's how this is such a in its most extreme form. It can really, really badly impact the family around the patient, just beyond the wanting your sibling slash child to get better. It's just the stress it puts on everyone is obviously really major.
Yeah.
Um, Sorry, go on.
Yeah. One other one is the 42. It's from Arrowhead. They're in
Yep.
the rare disease space with their RNA drug, right?
Yep.
Pretty cool there. Arrowhead's a mighty company, John, right? They continue to pump out great. They've got great science, and be surprised if this doesn't get picked up by a large pharma,
Well,
right? I think that's kind of
they
their
have
model.
they have got some partnership with GSK, but I don't know the extent of it.
Mm. Yeah, but I think their model is to
Sure. Yeah.
bring them, get them to either a late phase stage and then sell the asset. I don't. I'm almost surprised to see that they brought this one to market, but I'm sure somewhere they're going to look for a bigger farmer to help them turn it into a blockbuster.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, that model of partnering, and I think it was Ionis, but I don't think I noted it. They had a drug approved for another RNAi
yeah,
for prevent attacks of hereditary angioedema. Um, again, I think their model is to partner, but this is one they've elected to take to market themselves.
yeah,
Oh no, it's not. No, sorry, I've got it wrong. I think it's Insmed was the company that have partnered, and
yeah.
then they had a drug brensocatib, which is been again another small molecule to treat non-cystic fibrosis bronch
Bronchi
bronchi bronchiectasis, and it
bronchiectasis. Yeah,
and yeah, that's they're electing to take that one to market themselves as opposed to partnering.
yeah.
Um,
It's really cool.
what I wanted to touch on, and I think we talked in another previous podcast about butterfly skin, again a rare disease where it's the patients it just takes a minor trigger for their skin to just break up. And so they spend a lot of their lives wrapped in bandages, etc., to try and control that. And
Mm,
Crystal Biotech had I think a gene therapy approved for it last year, and
mhm.
that's like a a topical
Yeah,
application. Um, Number 13, Abiona Therapeutics
yeah.
also had a cell therapy approved for the same indication, but the therapy comes as a credit card size skin sheets that are applied via surgery. So there's at least two options for those patients, depending on what I would assume what's the least painful of
Yeah.
the two.
I'm impressed that there are only two cell therapies, which these are not cell-based gene therapies, John. Those are very different. Which, by the way, I do not see any on here in that space, right? The CAR
Mhm.
T cell, the CAR macrophage cell.
Sure, absolutely, yeah,
But
you're right. Yeah.
but I do think we'll see more gene. We'll see more gene therapies that are non-cell based with mRNAs making their way, right? There's a big, I think that's really the wave of, kind of immune effector cell therapies. And that could include CAR Ts and cell therapies that are gene based, as well as mRNA based therapies that take advantage of the host, right? We talked about that on previous things where instead of having this really expensive therapeutic that requires a hospital visit to draw your blood, a couple weeks to manipulate those cells, you got to go back to the hospital to get injected. You might have to do that quarterly or, more than once. The idea of using a straight mRNA vaccine is really the wave, but to be determined how effective they are. But I don't want to diminish how advanced the CAR T cell
Sure.
therapeutics are,
Yep.
because now they're generating like multi-specific CAR Ts, right? So like a bi, one CAR T that's been altered in a way that it's got two altered receptors on it, so it becomes that much more powerful. And we are working on something for a local university for that. I think that's public knowledge. But great stuff there, John. I'm kind of done.
I've got a couple more. I just
Keep
found it
going. Keep
fascinating,
going. Keep going.
I will wrap up soon. But number 26, Leo Pharma, and this is a Danish company, small molecule. The drug's approved for treatment of chronic hand eczema. And this is one of the two that was actually already approved in Europe. But I thought this really summarizes what drug development, how much of a gamble and how high cost it is. Basically says approved by it's a topical JAK inhibitor. Leo believe it could make them profitable for the first time since 2018. So think how much money they've spent in
Yeah.
that intervening time to finally get that drug to market.
Yeah.
That
It is
was
cool. And
one.
it's treating hand eczema. What a horrible disorder that is.
Yes, absolutely. That was interesting that there's Boehringer and Bayer both had a drug, um, number 30, number 44,
Mhm.
both approved for exactly the same condition. So it's treatment of adults with unresectable or metastatic non-squamous non-small cell lung cancer with activating HER2 mutations. So it's interesting that both of them are approved. So then it'll be, how do those two battle out? Both small molecules, and we'll see. And actually, Bayer, when we talked about some of the heavy hitters that we don't see on the list, Bayer are actually have in the news have been sort of concerned about their pipeline, but they have two approvals on the list this year.
Mm.
And then I think I will shut up soon.
By the way, Lilly has another HER2 targeted small
Yeah,
molecule.
sure, absolutely. Yep,
So, so breast cancer is dominating the list here, but go on.
yep. And I think,
I mean,
um,
while you were looking, something popped. Go ahead. Maybe you were, but something popped into my
I
head.
think I think this may be the last one actually. In Aviva have a zoliflodacin to treat uncomplicated urogenic gonorrhea. And again, it's that thing, you think this is a condition that we've got under control, but it says this is the drug comes as granules that dissolve in water. New options to treat gonorrhea are important given the global rise in gonococcal drug resistance. So again, you think you got this condition under control, but no, you don't.
Yeah.
It's gonna if you give it the opportunity to come back, it will come back. And yeah,
Bigger, better, and stronger too.
yes.
Switching gears on you, one of the Bayer drugs is for treatment of moderate to severe hot flashes due to menopause. That's a really cool. I didn't know that got approved. I think that is, I obviously cannot experience a hot flash, but man, they are they can really affect women, and great to see a woman's health drug on the market here to help treat some of that. It's I think every woman will face it, and good to see an approval there. And I kind of put that into the psych. To me, it's like in the psych. I don't know if psychiatric or psychosis state, but I feel like it
I
plays
think
a role.
psychosis is the wrong word, but
Yeah, definitely the wrong word.
and yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
John, I'm going to get if my wife is listening to this, she may slap me for that one.
So let's move on. I've got
Yes,
two
thank you,
more, and
John.
then
Thank
I've
you. We can move
got
on.
two more that I think are interesting because you don't necessarily expect the research in this area. One is Alcon, a small molecule, signs and symptoms of dry eye disease. And this is basically the TRPM8 receptor agonist triggers nerves in the cornea to rapidly produce natural tears. And so it gets you away from, the eye drops thing, etc. And hopefully, hopefully works better. I think it is challenged to deal with dry eye disease, and maybe this is a way forward.
Yeah.
And the last one, if I can find it, is actually what is it?
While you're looking, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
There's a couple cardiac drugs on here. Let's
Yep.
not lose sight of that. Cytokinetics has one, and I believe Milestone Pharmaceuticals. Well, no, Milestone, that's for Paroxysmal. That's different. But it's supraventricular tachycardia, so it does have something to do with
And my final
cardiac.
my final outburst is again ophthalmologic, and this is Lens Therapeutics. I love the name of the drug.
Yes.
It's called Viz. Viz, for anyone from the UK, is an adult comic with some really close to the bone humor, and some of it is absolutely fantastic. So to have a drug named after Viz is great. It's to treat adults with presbyopia, which in translation, Lens Therapeutics hopes to replace reading glasses and get the 100 million plus people in the US with presbyopia onto its eye drops. And talking to someone who started on reading glasses maybe 18 months ago and now has 3 pairs scattered around the house, having lost a fourth pair before Christmas, I might have to talk to my doctor about that one.
Yeah, I agree. I only had to start wearing glasses a few years ago, and sometimes I forget to wear them. Although legally I need them when I'm driving. It is something. It's not quite reading, but that did catch my eye. But and would be an interesting thing to unburden from glasses. John, I've only got like one pair right now, and that I got two that are scratched is what I've got, and one other pair, and I just got to go get another one.
Yeah,
There was
reading glasses have been a lifesaver. I mean, they're relatively cheap, but it has really
yeah,
helped
I got
in terms of reading and stuff.
bifocals though, so I got to
Yeah,
really go to an actual ophthalmologist to get mine.
sure.
But the
Yep.
one last one here is Kura Oncology and Kiwa Kieran.
Yep.
Yeah, they got a small molecule for acute leukemia. So the leukemia lymphoma made the treatment here. I think it's the only one on here, and
Yes.
years past it had dominated. That had let's not lose sight of how we still need drugs for leukemia and lymphoma. All right, John.
We can wrap it up, I think.
Yeah,
I think we
fascinating. Really nice to dive into this. It's always kind of interesting to reflect on. It also gives us a snapshot, I think, into what's coming in the future
sure.
and where the
Yeah.
market's going.
Yeah.
But
And actually, as a addition of a suffix to this, there was an article just a couple of weeks ago talking about how do you stop pharma companies herding into all the same indications, and so to a large extent that's happening. Obviously, obesity's hot at the moment, and I maybe we'll touch on that article next time, depending on what else we find. But it is nice to see the wide variety of
yeah,
indications that were looked at, were approved this year. It isn't all just on oncology. There's
yeah,
there's a lot of other stuff besides that could make real difference to people's lives. So it's one of those things. Take home message for me. It's fascinating reading this stuff, but it reminds me that how lucky we are to be doing bioanalysis that supports these drugs and gets them to market that we know are helping people. So even all we're doing is sitting an instrument and producing numbers. Those numbers are essential to helping someone's health
yeah.
somewhere down the road.
Well said, and I'll just add globally, right, John?
Yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
big thing.
Yep.
Over the last few years, we really have become a global company and
Yeah,
supporting
and
worldwide.
the last piece I will say, because we had discussing how could we support all these molecules, how would we approach them. The small molecules are obviously pretty pretty routine. But ultimately, when you look at that list, that it's different from when I've looked at this list in the past, where there are gaps where I'd say, well, that's not something we could do, that's not something we could do, that's not something we could do. I look at all 53 of these, and we could, with all the different services we have, we could have provided bioanalytical support for all 53 of them if we obviously if we'd been talking to the right customers. Like says, we did support a couple that made it to market, but we could have helped everyone.
Yeah,
And that's really nice. Again, that's really nice to look at, to say where we are as a bioanalytical provider, that we can do it all.
Yeah, certainly for any small molecule, we could
Sure.
do the PK and pharmacodynamic and biomarker. But even any of the biologics and ADCs, those are really strong areas to help with not just PK and biomarker, but the immunogenicity component of it. Then when you get into the gene therapies and cell-based therapies, again, that we're really well suited for sometimes the PK becomes the PD, and that could be a flow method. Really well situated for that, and even vaccines, John,
Sure,
between ELISpots and flow cytometry and biomarkers, and even PK analysis. Because we've got, like you said, all the service lines that we've got, and instrumentation and facilities and expertise that we have to support it. So I agree. It's a proud feeling to think that we could support every drug on this without a doubt. And you're right. As recently as 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to say that.
Yep, absolutely. Anyway, let's move on. I suppose we're done.
Yeah. What do you got going on in your world, John? I know it's cold as Antarctica is what it is.
It's too cold to think about doing anything. So we were all in Kansas City last week for sales training, and so we flew over on Tuesday. So Monday night, my belt on my trousers started malfunction. The buckle wasn't quite right, and then I realised that it somehow the buckle got stretched, so it wasn't holding, and so the belt was coming apart. So I fixed that piece, and then on Tuesday night, the belt broke completely. The buckle broke completely. So for the rest of the week, and I'm someone who likes to be comfortable with my belt on my trousers.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
So for the rest of the week, I'm away from home. I had no belt, and so I'm in mortal fear. Are my trousers going to fall down while I'm walking around the Kansas State facility or not? Or as it happened, they held up, and they held up all the way back to Rochester on Friday night, and actually they've held up since. I haven't had any disasters. So my big task for this weekend was go and buy a belt. But honestly, the temperature forecast make me think I don't actually want to leave the house.
No.
So we had the big snowfall on like Sunday, Monday. I did brush off my car on Monday, but Kat didn't actually do hers until yesterday, because it's like, we're not going anywhere until we absolutely have to. So yes, I think that's gonna be our weekend. We might get adventurous as we get closer, but right now on Thursday it looks like the best idea is just really not to do anything. Although I probably guarantee Kath will be out doing stuff, because she is going back to the UK next week for a reunion with 3 of her university friends, as they all hit a significant milestone in their life, and so she's got that to look forward to. I'll just hunker down in the cold.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure. Well, I'm sure you got, like, to me, the similar situation, that like piling up on groceries, watching the snow fall for 2 days, making good food inside. So for me, I think I don't know if I've mentioned it to you, but I'm celebrating my 20th anniversary this year, and I've come up with this concept that my wife is all in on with me, and we're going to do 25 trips for 25 years, and we'll do some big ones. But we had our first little trip, and we went to a place called the Chateau Avalon. It's only maybe 30 minutes from our house, but it's like a big, it's technically a hotel, but it's got these themed rooms and a spa in it. So my wife and I checked in at, this was over Martin Luther King weekend. So we checked in Sunday night. We got the Roman room, great room. had a fun evening drinking in their speakeasy. Had a great night, and then did our couples massages the next day. So we've got our first trip. We were hoping to do another one this weekend, maybe locally, because again, it's just a little bit hard to maybe hop on a plane or drive more than a few hours. But this cold's putting us behind, John, right? So
Sure.
think about it. We're trying to do maybe 2 a month to get to that 25, and we might fall short here in January. We do have at least one more trip planned over Valentine's Day to go about an hour away to a local resort. Again, more couples themed stuff, but we're starting to key in on how we're going to do this. My wife did get us a couple stocking stuffers, which are local attractions in Kansas and local attractions in Missouri. So we've kind of we were hoping to do like at least one night, and so if we went away for 5 nights, for instance, that would be still one trip.
Sure. Yep.
But we've kind of thought about how we're going to do it. If we go to a day trip on one of these little local excursions and go see some of the history around, that'll qualify. So we are optimistic that we can hit the 25, but we're a little behind. So this weekend we are considering something. But now that the temp is supposed to be like 0 or 5, it's no fun to drive a couple hours and try to walk around a nice town and see stuff, and then it'll be desolate because of the weather. So we're falling behind. But like you, no real special plans this weekend other than avoiding the cold and making some great food. I did make a nice I sous vide a roast for the first time, John, and
nice.
Oh my God, did it come out good? I cannot believe how good this came out.
Good.
And so I don't know what I've got up my what I'll focus on. And then I did make some pasta sauce recently, so I got a bunch of that. So I'm sure I'll make something out of that as well. But nothing on the horizon here. Kind of unfortunately the weather is kiboshing things, but if you draw a circle around Kansas City within, say, 6 to 8 hours, you can get to Nashville and Denver and places like that. So those are on our list for this year. And even Texas, we haven't ventured down to Texas. Some of that we may fly, but we want to go to like Dallas and San Antonio, and definitely a San Diego trip and a Vegas trip.
Yeah, I would think 25 should be pretty achievable.
I know it's really a fun thing, and it's we're empty nesters again. Our son was home for, I don't know, like 6 weeks or something, and so he left about a little over a week ago. Some of the ways to it's weird. It wasn't like when we moved him out last year as a freshman, it was kind of easy. Now he pops back into our life and he leaves, and it's kind of like, that sucks. It's funny how that works. I mean, it kind of went away because the cooking and the cleaning and the dishes and stuff but we miss him. And anyhow, John, no big plans, but I'm sure I'll have a fun packed weekend, and of course, there's no football this weekend, but the New England Patriots made the Super Bowl, in case you hadn't heard, John, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I haven't been paying attention to it. I think it was we. Obviously, where I am, Buffalo are big, so there was a lot of hope that Buffalo would do well. So the village was very downhearted after that.
Yeah, then they fired their coach. We'll see if that's a good move. I don't know. I question that move. You got a coach who keeps getting you to the playoffs. I know he's not getting you to the dance necessarily, but remember, coaching. Well, the Patriots are a classic example. Their first-year coach is a guy by the name of Vrabel. He won a few Super Bowls with them, and he's turned that team around. And of course, we got a quarterback who's very young. So all the haters of the New England Patriots are going to have to deal with this again. It's great.
Yep.
Love it.
I view all that stuff as long-term projects.
And
to rush to sack people on that stuff.
Yeah, Kansas. The sun still came up here in Kansas City because they've made the Super Bowl several years in a row now, and so that was pretty. It was kind of funny to see people kind of lulling around after they got eliminated. Not sure, but for me, who's a fan of the Chiefs and the Patriots, this is glorious. It seems like whatever, maybe NFL teams should ask me to go move there because they will win. No, I'm just kidding. All right, John. I think nothing else. I'll see you in the funny pages.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much. That was fun.